All right, guys, welcome back to another Conscious Conversation, episode 34, in a very unknown location. hidden location.
Underground COVID bunker.
How you doing, Craig?
I'm good, man. Chatalicious. How are you?
Yeah, great. We've got someone else who's off camera. Gaza, do you want to say hi as well?
How we doing?
Some of you might know him. He's come all the way from Australia just for this podcast. So we're going international. And yeah, so Gareth might be training in the background. If he's making any noises, please do drop it in the comments and just complain about Gareth making noises. If Gareth's got a point, we've told him, just shout it out or come into the conversation. We just had a massive conversation just before this podcast. We've done it again. We should let the camera roll.
Always, man.
Anyway, how's things?
Things are good, mate. Yeah.
How's the first week of lockdown serving you? Lockback 2.0.
Same as last time, really. I'm already being too productive and already putting pressure on myself, but that's because I've enrolled in like 4 courses to do at once.
Right.
So I'm going to get 2 of them boxed off this week, and then I can chill a little bit. But it's already that time that it's like, oh yeah, let's get stuck into that. It's like, no, remember what you did last time. Learn your lessons. Ease off. Yeah. What about yourself, man?
Just been busy. Just been busy with this.
Yeah,
setting a new space just for the lockdown, just to train and stuff. But yeah, I just really fell in love with this place. And yeah, it's going to be amazing when lockdown eases and then the space is open. But yeah, so I think it was learning from the first lockdown, and I think, like you said, I was completely burnt out. Like I was burnt out with teaching, burnt out with training, burnt out with clients. And I think I used that opportunity to go climbing because we were going into the spring and the summer. But now the weather was not the best and the temperatures aren't the best. And I remember the first time I went climbing last year outdoors, it was about 3 or 4 degrees. My fingers were frozen, and to climb when you can't feel your fingers, it's just a really weird feeling. I guess it's something you probably have a familiarity about with when you're doing breath work, when you can't feel the fingers and they're numbing, like that. But imagine trying to hold on to things and relying on your fingers when you can't feel them.
Man, scary stuff, because you need that tool, don't you? You need your fingers to be there. You don't want to not be able to trust yourself. And I suppose you just got to have complete faith that things are going to work out. If you're climbing and you can't feel them, might be best not to do that though. Yeah,
there's a good picture of me where I almost took the top rope off. My brain wasn't working. I was like, I'll just clip off this, and I was going to be dead if I let go of it. But no, I think my instincts kicked in. But my friend said he enjoys the feeling because what happens is, once you can't feel the fingers, you can now wedge the hand. You can start using fist jams, finger jams, and all sorts of stuff. You'll feel it once the blood comes back, but once in that moment when you're doing it, it feels quite nice. For some people, actually, fun enough, a lot of the climbers, they climb during dry conditions. Early in the morning when it's a little colder, the rock feels a lot better. It's more grippy on the hands. And as the sun comes up, the rock just seems to sweat, especially in the summertime. It just sweats, so it becomes very greasy. The moisture comes off the rock, and so I do really appreciate why people do it, but it's definitely not for me. So I'll wait until the temperatures become a little more warmer and then probably head out then.
I wonder what it does to your brain as well, that extra little bit of fear or caution around the practice that you're doing. I remember seeing those pictures of dudes who were doing like handstands on the edge of buildings, or that fella who climbed up the pyramids in Giza, and there's that dude who ran up Manchester City's ground as well. I think he climbed some scaffolding.
Yeah.
Anyway, just people more so about the fellas doing handstands on the edge of buildings, and what state you need to be in to do that. Do you have to eradicate any fear of shit, this might go wrong or I might mess it up? Or is that not even a concept to the person who's capable of doing those things? Does that not exist because you go all in to your flow state and like, yeah, I'll do it because it's fine. Just as if you're solidly doing it on easy, flat land, Maybe you've got more of an insight in that with free climbing.
I think it's just that. I think it's the fact that you've done it so many times. It's like if I was to ask you to walk in a straight line, right now you'll be completely comfortable. You're surrounded by more flooring, so there's no way you're going to fall. But I present you a beam, lift you up about 100 feet off the ground, and ask you to do the same thing, and then everything changes. Why? Why does it change? Well, it changes because of the way I think we perceive depth. And as soon as the human eye comes in contact with some sort of depth, remember, it's not the fear of falling, it's the fear of... it's not the fear of heights, it's the fear of falling. That's what kicks off in people's heads, and I think that's where it is that a lot of people struggle with. And I think if you slowly drip yourself, build it up, and then I think eventually you build a tolerance. Just like anything, any elite level sport. You know, some of the stuff that these guys do, and they talk about flow state and all these crazy states that people go into, but all it means is that you're focused and you're refined. You've refined your focus so well that you're just on it, and you can switch it on whenever you want.
Yeah, there's no outside distraction or interference as a consideration, or everything's conspiring to help you get done what it is that you're going to get done. On the Dream Yoga course I was doing on the weekend, we were talking about like conceptual deaths really, but it was with virtual reality goggles. So we're saying that the take that you have on reality is it's perceived by how real or how solid that you think the experience is, which is our feelings and our mind, and we go, this is like that way and this person is that and I'm like this. We're creating that reality solid when reality is not solid whatsoever at any point. Even the chair, you know, all the atoms, what is it, like 99.9% recur in space or something mad like that. But yeah, we perceive it solid because we can sit on it. And it's talking about not confusing appearance for what the actual reality is, which we do, and is really a big concept of what we discuss, is the appearance isn't the actual reality. Yes, the appearance is there. It's not saying it doesn't exist, it does exist, but it's not what you think it is. And they use this example of, you know, becoming awake, becoming lucid in the dream. You're surrounded by illusion. Everything in that dream is your illusory mental state. The dream is essentially mind manifestation, so it's all just coming from the mind. And it's realizing that's why, you know, in the dream yoga practice, is taking that to bring that into your waking state. It's the same thing, it's just we think this is more realer because we woke up for a dream and we don't have this frame of reality to compare it with anything next, you know, like a state of enlightenment, or consider a flow state. That could be the next step, the next evolutionary point to frame this reality from, you know, the solid reality. To circle this background, saying that, yeah, virtual reality, so as you've just said there, you're in this room, it's fine. You take a look at the room, okay, cool, the floor's there, there's nothing bad. You put these virtual reality goggles on, where you're in the same room, and you've got a beam from the virtual reality room, and lava falling down, and like, you know, you're in a volcano or whatnot. And there was a guy that I know, he was doing this in London, he was training people for lucid dreaming experiences, and he was saying like people wouldn't walk across the beam. They use this example on the course as well. This guy was saying they had a Buddhist monk do it. They took him 150 floors up in this room and got him to do the same thing, put the mask on and walk across it. And then when you get to the other end, you just have to jump off. Obviously you jump and you land in on the ground, but when you do it with the mask on, it feels as if, you know, your brain tells you you're going to fall there. You know, just that alone, like, you can profoundly change how you see your life when we understand that that's what the brain's doing to us all the time. And the things that we're saying is solid, like the image that we're looking at is saying it's solid, but it's not. And we know it's not, but we play along with it. And this is why we go to movies, right? It's why we go to see films, and you're with the characters and you're going through their journey and their story, and you're laughing and you're crying, and we're paying to be in another reality. You know, we're paying to be sucked out of the world that we live in for whatever reasons we want. And I think the innocence in that is it's nice to have those experiences and the enjoyment of it. The detrimental side is that we're doing that all the time, and we now think reality is solid, and this person is like that, and Donald Trump is this guy, and the world is like that. Because my feelings, I'm placing that solidity on something as transitory as a feeling. Like, how mad's that? The feelings, they can flow, they can come and they can go, but we're like, no, I'm angry, so I'm going to do this action because my anger is solid. Even though we know it will pass if we want it to. And there we're basing that solidity on who we think we are by revisiting these experiences again and again to solidify and making them harder and harder. And I think this is in psychology, where the more we do that, the harder it is to change. You know, they say when you hit 40, you're kind of stable in who you are with your mindset, which if you develop yourself to continue to be open, you'll continue to be open in your mindset. But yeah, man, how we make illusionary or temporary things permanent, and the effects that has on our life, and what we then can, almost, or what we cannot do with our life. No freedom, because we're stuck in these little boxes that we've created to make it real.
Yeah, so there's a couple of topics we can divulge in from what you just said there. So the experiencing reality is all within yourself. So I think there was a thing that Sadhguru mentioned, which was quite interesting. He said, when you touch something, the fact that you're sat on a chair, or you know, you touch the clothes that you're wearing, how do you know the clothes that you're wearing aren't you? Like how can you tell? Well, we have boundaries. The boundary that we have, that you define yourself as yourself, ends at the skin. Anything beyond the skin is external, it isn't you. So obviously, if I touch you, I know that I'm not you and you're not me. We can see the boundary there, the physical boundaries there. It's the other boundaries that we don't know how to comprehend. The physical ones, again, like you said, we put those barriers in play and say, this is my physical boundary. This chair is obviously an inanimate object because it doesn't obviously have any feelings, emotions, etc. because I am separate from that, and we know things that do have feelings and emotions look like this or look like this. So like you said, we put compartments and we put everything in that compartment, and we define the world through that. But the interesting thing I find is when people have their brains wired differently. So when people can taste color or see through smell, or the opposite as well. So there was that guy who's blind and he used echolocation to, and he used to play video games. So it's one thing to use echolocations to bounce sound off objects and see the world that way, but another thing to do the same thing and play video games. You know, it's just, now you've got an electrical device that already has its own boundary and you're bouncing it off that. So it's incredible what he was able to do. And I think it does come from the idea that it's all based on our own faculties. What barriers have you put in place in your mind since you were a kid? Conditioning from your parents, conditioning from all the other people that you've known since you were a child, and how you've taken that into adulthood. Do you remember people say that they've lost their inner child, or they feel like they're not as creative as they used to be, or not as happy as they used to be? It's because, like you said, by the age of 40, or between the ages of 30 to 40, you've solidified what you believe in and how you feel about certain things. And that, through that, is causing more problems in your mind. The dissonance that happens is because you've seen something and the way you perceive it is not the way it's happened. So now there's a cognitive dissonance. So I think our focus should be in life to go beyond those boundaries. And the way we do it is exactly what you've been teaching, which is breathwork. You can come through. Breathwork, meditation, psychedelics. But I would say psychedelics, there's a very fine line between needing something to open up your mind and using your own faculties to open up your mind. And I think people now, especially in this culture that we live in, and since the hippie movement in the 60s, people are now turning to these psychedelics when they have no desire to have any sort of control over that and have it inside themselves. I think that's a dangerous path, because now, again, you're using an external substance to stimulate the sort of whatever you want to see as reality. And again, it's whatever you want to see as reality. You know, something might open up that you don't want to, a tunnel or a path might open up that you didn't want to go down. But it was the fact that you wanted to get some sort of outcome out of it, and then through that you've opened something else up. Yeah,
it's there's a really cool meditation practice that I like with the Tibetan Buddhism and Dream Yoga, in that what you learn through the mind, and seeing that this thing that you said with Sadhguru is like, you know that where you end and where that thing begins and how you're not that. And it's seeing that where we solidify then self and other. So, you know, people talk about connection, oneness, we're all one. How many people have truly had an experience of that? And we all definitely have. It's just what we recognize, and do we live to move continually to that state? Most of the time, no, we just use the words, or we talk about it, or we get the external stimulus from, say, the plant medicines, or a flow state, like even when we're, you know, you do something really elevating, you climb a big mountain or something that you've never done, and you're like, you know, you feel so connected and alive, and like there's nothing, no thoughts, no past, no present that can take anything away. The mind isn't separating you from anything else, because you're in a joyous state. And even when you're with like friends or loved ones, or you just all have a nice time, whenever, it's like there's connection there. That connection is a lack of self and other. We use self and other. Obviously, here's a chair, I want to sit down on it, this chair wasn't here, you know, it is something other than myself. That framework is, I think, the massive hindrance to developing that ability to connect to everything, or other people at least. Let's just start with people, because these practices are definitely processes. It's not just, you should be connected to everything and everyone, or berating yourself for knowing that you're not. I had that feeling, the psychedelics, or that climb, or meditation, I had that feeling, and now I should have it all the time. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like you have these glimmers, the clouds part every now and again, and the sun shines through, and then the clouds form again. It's like eventually the sun will be there all the time. This is a lifelong journey. You know, we need to see the objects that we have that are the blocks and the resistance to being in that state. So with that seen as self and other, we're creating duality. We're not accepting both sides of the thing. Like that's where nationalism, tribalism, borders around country, you stick to yours, I'll stick to mine, you know, and all the stuff that history can tell you. But this practice is really cool that you use for your mind, and again, just the dream state, because it's easy. You're in complete illusion, and we don't realize it. Everybody's going to sleep tonight, and we're having passive normal dreams. We're not seeing that we're in a dream. We're not seeing that. Oh, there's a pink elephant. You know, there's an alien flying around, or you're in the other part of the world, or you're talking to dead people. Whatever. It's like that's all illusion and coming from mind. And we're doing that in the waking state. But if we can see that when we're in the dream state, the illusionary state, that it is us, right? The mind, the elements are us. And it's the same thing here too. You're having an individual experience, as I am, as Gaz is, as everybody is. But just like a character in your dream, you might think they're having their own experience. Not there's a level of us where consciousness is imbued within the body, but behind it, it's all, that's the thing that's all the same. And it's when we access deeper levels of consciousness, we get to experience that connection or that level of elevation from the climb or the psychedelic. Is that's what's there all the time. No self, no other, just consciousness or just experience is there all the time. And I think the pursuit of getting towards the understanding of that state, because it takes a hell of a lot of practice to bring this into our lives, and a lot of effort and energy to want to continue that there, because we have to fight the different levels of egos off. We have to fight our own, defects about envy, lust, anger, difference, whatever it is that cause problems. They will continually pop up and pop up. It's not that we hate those things, that we see, I'm contracting somewhere there. I'm creating more of an issue, more of a pull away from the world by more anger or more hatred or more jealousy. They're not connecting emotions. They're separating emotions. They're creating more self and other. So it's seeing that that's what this idea of compassion is, and connecting to people and allowing things. Allowing doesn't mean, you let the world trample all over you, or somebody who's being a genuine knob, let them get in the way of it. It's like, I accept that that's how it is. Here's how we compassionately correct it. What's the right activity to do? And seeing it, it's coming all from self. It's all the same movement. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. It's so juicy for my mind and my personality to want to sink into that kind of stuff. And yeah, what's your take, man? You've probably got some cool views on that. I
just wanted to add to that we received a comment, I think it was the gaming podcast that we did, and I think someone said that, it's all good that you're saying, and obviously it was meant out of a good heart, not out of spite, but he said, it's all good that you're saying all this stuff, but, I don't think the process of life is to go through it Zen. And I said, no, that's not the process of life, but the process of life is, if you're someone who's advocating for peace, do you have the peace in you? What's the point going out there and rallying and saying, with all this, the lockdown going on and people rallying about the lockdown and and again, this time round, the marches were done peacefully, and the cops allowed that to happen because they understood that it was done peacefully as well. But there are times where people get very violent, and I always think, what is that violence for? And a lot of people, when you look at it at the very shallow level, they'll say, I'm doing it so then one day we'll live in a peaceful time. I said, if that peace doesn't already exist in you, how could you ever go to a peaceful time? How could you ever see yourself living in a peaceful time? There isn't a peaceful version of you there. So that practice has to be there. And even if it means you go towards violence and war, the Bhagavad Gita and going into war, it's your ability to separate yourself from the action that you're doing. That doesn't mean that I can just murder someone and then separate myself from the action of murdering someone. That means you accept the consequences of what's going to happen, and you take that burden on your shoulders. And the problem is, not many people can take that burden on their shoulders. So when people act very aggressively, all the messages that you get on social media where people are aggressive towards you out of you saying the tiniest thing about something, that comes out because I don't think people fully understand that, yes, this end goal is to search for peace and this perfect world, but at the end of the day, if that peace and whatever you're trying to strive doesn't already exist in you, you're never going to be able to reach that, because that world doesn't already exist in your inner self. So, and it sounds like all woo-woo stuff and hippie stuff, and And I think this is what the issue was with the hippie movement in the 60s. It started off with, love, peace, and just enjoying life. But then it became very aggressive and violent, where now, in order for me to save an animal, I had to break into someone's house, destroy their property. If I come across that person, beat that person up for caging these animals and testing on them, and then releasing the animals. So what have you done exactly in that situation? Yes, you've the original sort of desire to release this animal was pure. The intention was pure, but then it devolved into this very primal negative thing where you had to damage something or damage someone in the process to get this perfect outcome. So it's what we're piling on to things that we're doing for the intention of it to be a pure intention. Are we piling it with bullshit? And I think that's the easier thing to do. It's the most primitive thing to do. So if I feel like someone doesn't believe in my views, I should just beat him up, get him out of the way. But what does that resolve? Like, if you're looking for genuine peace and happiness and prosperity, you'll never be able to exist in that world if you're in that mental frame of mind. And I remember a while ago when I was talking to this girl, and it was through a social dating app when I was on those back in the days. But she was an American girl traveling the UK. She was here for 3 months, and she wanted to connect and stuff. And she asked me, she goes, you seem like you're a vegetarian or a vegan or something. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a vegetarian, because obviously I don't like the negative connotations that veganism or modern day veganism has. So I just left it at that. And she was like, oh, well, have you ever thought of being a vegan? I was like, to be fair, I don't really consume dairy. I've not done it for like 6 years. She goes, why don't you consider yourself a vegan then? I was like, well, I'm putting myself into a box. And the thing is, with being a Hindu, if I was to go to India, or if I was to go to London and go to the Hare Krishna farms where they milk the cows in the natural way and the cows live in peace and prosperity with the human beings that are there, it goes against that, because it means that you can't consume the product of animals. So why should I associate myself? If I'm doing that 90% of the time and then 10% of the time I'm not doing it, I can't really call myself that person or that category or definition or whatever you want to call it. But she had a very negative response out of that. She was like, well, eating animal products is bad and all this stuff. And I was like, well, in the age that you're living in and what you've learned or you've educated yourself, and I think that is the excuse, why don't you go and educate yourself? I think that's dangerous to say that to someone. To say, well, I think I know better than you, and I think you need to learn more about this through my lens. It doesn't mean that you should probably learn through an open lens. It means that you have to learn it through my lens. So when someone says to you, go and educate yourself, it means go and learn my side of the story first. Yeah. And I think, again, that is very dangerous, because now you're looking for conflict straight away. And that's what she did. And I said to her, well, you're saying all these things, but is your mind vegan? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, the way you're thinking right now, you're saying, all people that are not vegan are bad people, this and that, and all people should be vegan. Is your thoughts pure, or are you thinking it in a very angry way as well? And I said, what kind of charities and stuff do you support? And she was obviously a big advocate of all the extreme stuff that goes on where, human beings go out there, they destroy other people's properties and they save the animals in that process. It's the whole concept of Robin Hood, where you steal from the rich and give to the poor. And I do understand the concept of that. I used to be one of those people, but now I look at it and think stealing is still stealing, regardless of whether you do it to a rich person or a poor person. You've still stolen something, and then you try to disguise that, your guilt or your insecurity, and say that you are giving it to charity. And I think it's a very dangerous path for most people. And I think again, going back into circles, what we were saying before, it comes back to, are you able to separate yourself from your emotions or your feelings? So if you're feeling angry today, the focus of Zen, modern day Zen, is to separate, and maybe even ancient Zen, is just people's interpretations have gone wrong, is you don't suddenly say, oh, if someone punches him in the face, I'm just not going to react, or I'm not going to feel angry, or I'm not going to feel hurt by it. It means that you separate yourself from the emotion, but not in the sense that you completely distance yourself and say, oh, I'm not my physical self, so I don't feel anything. You separate yourself in the sense that you are completely present, you accept whatever has happened, and then you respond to the situation instead of reacting and thinking, I'm going to punch this guy back, or I'm going to go in the corner and cry. So that's what we mean by separation.
Yeah, man. Well said. I think the point on education is good. It's really bandied around it. I've done my own... rats running through the bloody vents.
What was that? Is that the wind?
John McClane's in the shaft.
That's probably the 5G tower. Go on, what are you saying?
What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying.
About the education.
Oh yeah. Go educate yourself, or I've done my own research and things are banded around like that, and yeah. But whose narrative?
Yeah.
Where's the educational research from? I think that's great. Say those things, but make sure that we've checked the other side as well, and to do that without the bias of wanting our information to be correct. Because as long as we're doing that, we're not going to find truth, real truth, where it is what it is, without what I believe or what you believe.
It's that positive feedback loop, isn't it?
Yeah, and we get that. I think the Social Dilemma on Netflix has a really good way of showing that whatever you're looking for, what you Google, what you like within your feeds, you will get more of it. So your narrative, your reality tunnel is only going to be further cemented to not change because you'll see more of what you believe, and you've got more facts and more accumulation. A really balanced and respectable and admirable human being will know what they like. They'll look into it, but they'll also be able to go, I like that, but I do need to check that out, what this person's saying too, and I'm not offended that they might be wrong, or not have to argue in an angry way and trying to get somebody to see your view. Like I have a client and we have different perspectives on the current coronavirus and how we what we believe is going on, how to handle it. But we're good mates, you know. We get like the heated at times, but underlying we do it because it's fun. Like it's entertaining for us, and we're mates, and we'll listen to each other's views, enjoy the play of it, and then go, yeah, thanks for that, I'll check that out, you know, at the end. And you can't do that in big angry groups, or where you've got your pitchfork and your torch ready to go and set fire to the other team, and you know it's hard to do that. But does you know, if something's really terrible like war, does it require a stronger backlash at times? Does it require the resistance? And that you see how somebody's view is, but that doesn't mean it's right. And like that's when what do you do to get that across to somebody? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be bullying that person and punching them in the face in the street, or you know, obviously to the degree of self-defense, but is it deemed upon yourself, I have to teach that person a lesson and I'll show them, you know, that kind of mentality is, or they don't know the truth, so I'll force it upon them. And like the example you use with the animals and breaking in, you know, the extreme side of that, has the Times created a necessity for that? Can you know, is there a balance point to stopping somebody doing that because they're in a level of ignorance and corruption that's, you know, I mean, we still breed living sentient beings to put them between two slices of bread. It's baffling. Like, I understand it again, and I'm not putting down anything otherwise. I think we need to be more compassionate in that sense, and look at, you know, I remember back in the gyms years ago and talking about it, like, yeah, but we've always ate meat and cavemen ate meat, and it's like, but we're not cavemen anymore. We've got a connected world and we can talk to the other side of the world, and even just saying, but would you eat your dog? Would you do it to your pet animal? And it's like, oh no, that's wrong, but I'd eat my chicken and cow. And it's like, right, okay. So it's not about morals, it's about what you're deeming's worthy of life or not, through ignorance, not in the term of being an offensive term, ignorance as in, I don't know, I haven't seen it, or I haven't sussed it out, or it hasn't been brought to my attention, not in an offensive way, but seeing if you can happily eat the cows and the chickens, like, again, a bit of meat from a healthy source, and the animals at the end of its life, or what, you know, this stuff makes sense to me. But to be doing things because we're habitually trained that way and conditioned without the thought, and we're all doing that on a level. There's still things I need to look at and go, why is that occurring? What am I not changing? What am I not looking at correctly? Because we're all doing it, but it's that information or the research that somebody else tells us about. Let's take it from it and go, all right, maybe you're right. But I'm also going to check out all sides and balance my information, not go, yeah, I found your point, but here's another point to refute it. Like, because then it's just tit for tat and we're not getting anywhere. It's open source, man. And I think that realization we're all the self, we're all one thing, we're not self another, we're not disconnected, is when we can start to send, like Muzz was saying, a bit of love to Donald Trump or a bit of love to somebody in the shop who's looking angry, like, rather than going, oh, I hate them because they're like that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, they've done their things and they've been brought up that way, to that level of emotion or expression or trauma. Taking responsibility all the time for our own stuff, 100%. but being able to see that that person hasn't had the ability to do that, or isn't aware of it, or is in that point of ignorance, and just being able to highlight it in a good way to a friend or to a partner, but you have to own how you feel about it, not how the other person's response, not how the other person responds to you about it, because they're in their own thing. It takes quite a lot of work and a lot of understanding to be at that point, but that's where you'll find peace. And the person who has that level of peace is because they're not really in conflict with themselves anymore. They understand that the world will have different views and different opinions and different experiences, because they've integrated so much of themselves, like, yeah, I was like this, or I have done that, or I've been a bully myself, or been mean or shameful or guilty or fearful and aggressive. And when you can accept that that's how a human's experience is and how life is, you can accept it in somebody else without having to put them down or bash them for it, but help guide a little bit if it's wanted, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a key point that you pointed out there, especially with all the election stuff that's been going on. I feel sorry for some politicians, because, and I know that some of them make some stupid ass mistakes, but in the world that we live in, and the amount of scrutiny that politicians, sports people, all the people on the media, celebrities, whatever, the list will go on. The amount of scrutiny and the amount of people watching them, and how they have to now end up pleasing everyone in the process. It gets to the point where you don't even allow them to even fully express one particular thing. So, for example, when it comes to presidency or a prime minister, a decision might be made by the person, and immediately there's an immediate backlash. And I understand the backlash, but let the person follow through with what they're doing first. And this, again, might sound controversial, and I have my views about the way this country's been run and the way America has been going. But if you look at someone like Trump, if you didn't know anything about him in terms of his personal life, how rich he was, whatever views he has about the world, or to do with his personal life, and then his political views, if you just look at it from the characteristics and the things that he's done in the time that he's been in office, and you didn't put his name on the sheet, you just left the characteristics like that, and then you lined it up with other people and other presidents in the past, you'll see that he's done some pretty decent stuff. I didn't get it, he's done many things that are not good, but he's done some pretty decent stuff. But just because you see the name, it's the name that invokes the anger, the hatred, and seeing his face. But as soon as you strip that away, and people are fine, if it was a woman or a woman president who was doing exactly what Trump did in his time in the office, everyone would be praising it, or praising her, and saying, wow, what a great job she did. But then as soon as you remove that and you put Trump back on and say, this is what he's done, people immediately feel like, oh no, he's a bit of a dick, so it's fine to hate on him. It's like when people in America, they had this guy, he was going around to university campuses and asking people, could you rank people in terms of the worst form of people to the best form of people? And they had like Hitler on there, Gandhi, Trump, Obama, and a couple of other presidents. And people actually put Trump near Hitler on that extreme, and they put Obama at the front. And they asked, and again, this is no political view, but they asked the person, why is Obama here and why is Trump there? And they'll give their views about Trump and say, this is why he's there. And the person will be like, okay, that's fair enough. What about Obama? Why is he like number 2, number 1? Oh, because he's black and he's the first black president. I'm like, this is what the problem with the world is. It's you're not even seeing what the person has done. You look at immediately the exterior. Oh, we should support this person because she's a woman. And feminism says that we should support women because they've been suppressed for God knows how many years. Oppressed. I think that kind of view is a load of bollocks. Because now you're putting everyone into black and white, and then there is no nuance, there's no grey, and you can't say, well, I feel this way, but at the same time, I also feel this way. It's either one extreme or the other extreme. And through these extremes, that's what causes the conflict. You are so tight, and you refuse to let go of your views based on a particular group that's representing only a tiny amount of your views, but you suddenly side with that group when you know, I don't know, about 60% of the views that this group has, I don't believe in, but I might believe in 40%. So why don't I focus on the 60% and try and figure out why I don't agree with that? So should I side with that group? But because I have those 40% traits, I immediately side with that group. That's what the issue with today's generation is. We're doing that, and we're doing that in a grander scale.
The politics is such a good example. Like the idea of a government or a governing body for our decisions is for the best of our decisions, right? And there will be a minority and a majority. This is the problem with having a class system and higher and lower and working class. But then we know that Marxism and communism isn't a beneficial solution in many ways. But politicians, rather than the way that it's portrayed in the House of Commons, it's like, well, I'm a Tory now, so whatever Labour says, even if they've got the best idea, I'm not having it. Or I'm a Labour, so we've got to do this, even if that Tory idea is a good idea. No, because they're not Labour's. Do you know what I mean? It's like, work together. Yes, your government is in power and they've won. Develop your own ideas still, but help it rather than pulling it down and distracting and pulling away, because you're there to serve the country, the people, the individuals. You're putting power for that, not above it, you know. And it's like, even looking at the side of that is craziness. The people that are supposed to be in power are too much time fighting rather than going, oh, it's a good idea, that, mate, thanks for that. How can your resources help ours? And we pull it together, rather than having a country divided. Like,
the division is there right from the start.
Right from the start, man.
So you're already putting these barriers in play to say that, well, you're against us because you're a conservative or whatever, and we don't want to listen to anything you're saying. We'll go with what we believe in. And I think the way to do it is to judge the person regardless of the party they represent. Judge the person based on what the characteristics they represent and the policies they put in place themselves, including the parties that are involved as well. Judge the groups, the parties on those basic characteristics. And I think we're getting into this situation where now we're not even, like I said, we're not allowing that to happen. We're immediately saying, well, now that person's a conservative, I shouldn't support them at all, regardless of what. Actually, the policies that they're putting in place do make sense, and they seem like they'll benefit the economy, but then because they're conservative, I shouldn't believe in it. And I think that's what's causing the conflict. And the fact that people bringing that into their social life, saying, I'm only going to date you if you're liberal, and that kind of stuff, is just like, what's wrong with people? Do you think that's what's going to create people unity together, or is it going to cause more separation? So to bring that aspect, a tiny aspect of the person you are, representing the politics that you're into your social life, again, that's dangerous as well. It's like me saying to you, well, we shouldn't really hang out because I'm brown and you're white. Stuff like that.
I have thought about that. I've given that thought before.
I've got the same ideas with these guys as well, with that. I shouldn't hang around with because he's half Indian.
Yeah, man, it's right, isn't it? But it's because I feel that when we're not as defined in a sense of self that can stand alone, then we'll look for the group and the tribes, And again, that's bred into us through thousands of years of evolution. Tribes, and if you're outcast from the tribe, you're on your own, and you're going to die, basically, because you've not got the village and the tribe to go to. And you develop that sense of bitterness, or like the Unabomber. I don't know if you see the story of the Unabomber. I did a series on Netflix about him, and that's fascinating. Basically, a really intelligent guy, had a hell of a terrible journey with society and teachers at university, very smart, and he ended up using that intelligence to plant bombs, postal bombs, and kill people. And it's a shame, but he was ostracized from society for no reason other than he was literally victimized. And it's sad, it's a sad story, but that's why we like to get into groups and have that safety and security there. And the opposite of that, if we don't work as a community, as a team, we become isolated, we become too independent, and we think that we're above things, or that people should bend to our will, or that that the world isn't good enough and there's flaws everywhere because they don't accept me for who I am. But this is why it's always the reflection of who you are and the definition in the sense of the person that you want to become. Not to get this mixed in with the fact that we can change every single day and you let your emotions move and whatnot, but defined by characteristics that you want to bring into the world, and having the level of understanding, which takes time and experience to get to the point where, not everybody thinks like me, but they are a good person still, or that person messed up a little bit over there, but I still accept it because I know where it came from. And if we didn't have people like that, like the homeless situations or abuses, the prison system, rehabilitation to help the circumstances that have created that person to be that way. Some people are just bad people. Like, some people will have that urge to do bad things for whatever reasons. Can we say they're a bad person? They're doing bad deeds and they've put themselves in a situation. If they're not willing to change but see why, then that's what I would make an internal judgment is bad. That's not right, but you want to do it. Not just that you want to do it, you act upon it, knowing that it shouldn't be done. That's when we're choosing to tilt the scales in a negative form, rather than something that's connective and all-inclusive as much as possible to a benefit of. but your awareness of yourself and what you want to bring to the world, I think, is vital. And seeing what comes in our way as an individual that doesn't let you bring that out.
Yeah.
Is it, I'm afraid what other people will say if I share my political views, or people might laugh if I express my poetry, or the society has bad food and they do all this to animals, so I don't want any part of it. It's like, nah, let's see the issue and see how I can develop myself to grow to help that person in an honest way, in a beneficial way, not to enforce my view, but to go, the world would probably benefit if we weren't transporting so much plastic, and animal life would benefit, as we saw in the David Attenborough documentary that we talked about, like just by a change of diet, whether what your views are on cruelty or not, like the world is suffering because we're creating a system that depends on these exhaustible fuels. It's going to lead to the end of all humans. Again, like you said, the world will be fine, but we won't be there to see it because of our own ignorance, because we choose not to, even though it's happening in front of our faces. And it's employing that on all the levels throughout society. But it's not bullshit, man. It starts with ourselves. It really does. Rather than leaning on somebody else, get help and support, but you got to do the work. You got to have the awareness.
Do you think it is that then? Do you think the fundamental level is the fact that people are not willing to do the damn work? And is that
we've got to know
right
about
for
it
us
first?
to be judged?
Again, how can we judge that? Because we see the life through the senses that we do, having more of a spiritual belief, I think, in the sense of life. All we can go off is what we know, and like trying to be as open and understanding to somebody as possible. It seems to be the only way that it's actually worked. And seeing when I get riled up or I'm angry at something, why is that contraction in me? Why am I not open enough to accept that? Even if it's outrageous, it's like, don't like that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it exists. So what do we do about that? Because it's the feelings in you, the feelings in the individual to do something with it.
Yeah.
Not in the outside world. The outside world is the factor that's triggered it. And again, goes
back to the boundaries thing, isn't it?
Because some people, like Muzz, how can he as a firefighter deal with seeing people dying and having to save burning bodies and whatnot to somebody who's squeamish and can't? Well, that's the way he's trained, and his whatever it is in him that can do that has developed that, and that's that level of care, you know. The anxiety, still having anxiety.
Yeah.
Somebody might have that in a sense of about food. I hate seeing somebody eat fast food. It goes through me because they're slowly killing themselves, or smoking or whatever. We're not saying anything's right or wrong, but it's like, what is it that's in your life that you want to work with, that you can help with? And I think that's the point of being an individual too, is there's things that speak to you for a reason. So work within that field. If something else that, like politics, is not my cup of tea whatsoever, man, never really been interested. And I see it from the stance that maybe things are getting better overall, I don't know, but every time you watch a video about it or the House of Commons, everybody's up in rears about it, and it's not working. But I leave that field to elsewhere, so I don't dive into it. It's just my view is that it would work better if we union. But there'll be specialised people who know how to enact that within that field. And if you're moved by politics, if you're moved by animal cruelty, if you're moved by firefighting, if you're moved by spiritual texts, whatever, go into your field. How do you help bring that out?
I think with the situation we're in terms of technology and how we can communicate with the other side of the world, why do the politics from the other side of the world affect you? This is what I don't understand about the situation. I get it, this is massive election going on in America, but people here are getting riled up, and it's like, how does that make sense? If you're angry about how things are here because you're living in this country and it's going to affect you directly, that's a different debate. But for you to get aggressive and angry and start to put all this stuff out there on social media saying, you're wrong for believing this, and why you're not educating yourself on this and that. It's like, why are you getting so riled up about it? And I think it's the fact that what you said earlier, through the documentary, The Social Dilemma, it shows you that you're going to be directed to things that you are already looking at. So you might just think, I might glance over this politics video just to find out what's going on in America. Before you know it, the algorithms are sending videos your way. So again, how conscious are you at seeing that happening? We've got the information out there. In a time 10, 15 years ago when people would say most things were conspiracies and we didn't have the information out there, I don't know what to believe in. I think I'll just go with the masses. I could kind of understand that to a certain degree. But now the information is out there. Now you're getting the other side of the story. Now you've got people that used to work for those damn companies and they've created a system themselves, are coming forward and saying, this is what it is. I wouldn't let my kids be exposed to this. Maybe you should think about not letting your kids get exposed to it. If they're saying it themselves, then why are we so quick to say, well, this must be the definitive answer, or this must be the definitive narrative, and there can't be any other narrative. So yeah, I find that really deeply troubling, the fact that you are now affected by stuff that's going on the other side of the world. And well, people say, well, you're not compassionate. I was like, well, it's when someone dies and you don't know that person, and you vaguely know the person, how does it affect you? Well, you feel a little down about it, thinking, okay, that person's passed away, but it doesn't affect you directly. Why does it not affect you directly? Well, we don't have the capabilities to care about more than, I think it's 150 people or something in your own vicinity. Anything beyond that, you can't care, in the sense that you have no deep emotional attachment towards that person in terms of, you know, how you feel about them, how they affect you in terms of emotionally as well. So taking that away, that doesn't mean you don't become compassionate. What that means is, or you don't become compassionate to other people's situations. What it means is you don't attach yourself to those little things. You know, people die every bloody day. It's like the whole corona situation where people are saying, well, this many people have died. Look at the demographic. Look at the age, you know, and then look at the situation and why they're dying. It's looking at it at that level as well. And the people that are, you know, obviously saying other things about the situation and making it out to be something that's greater than it already is, are not willing to look at those things and really think about, well, people die every day. How many people are dying of road accidents, alcohol abuse, you know, freak accidents, all sorts of stuff that's going on around the world. And like we said, we're putting a lens on one thing and making it out to be this massive thing. And that's what a magnifying glass does. You chuck a magnifying glass over something, it makes an ant into a beast. So it's looking at it from that perspective and appreciating it as that. Yes, you're shining your magnifying glass because the internet is a massive place. And you need to shine your magnifying glass somewhere to get some sort of information, but don't make that your central hub. So, yeah.
Yeah, that magnifying glass. Like, this is it with lenses, isn't it? You've got the magnifying glass to focus in on the smaller things and zoom down or make it big, or you've got the telescope to look up and see something above us. But where's the middle stage of our life? You know, what we're living and feeling and looking through our own eyes. Are we looking down on something and getting really irate and like this is the only thing, or are we looking up too grand and not doing anything with where we are? Because again, for me, it just rings back to the balance within yourself. Like, what you're doing in your immediate circle. More so, what you're doing with yourself. Like, how fractured is the individual? Because that's where all these efforts show themselves to be problems, because we're not balanced. You know, we get pulled around, and you know, the internet is like, let's look at that as escape of the mind, because the mind is the same thing. Your mind is super open, super wide. We narrow it on certain things, and we just let the mind reside like that when it can be infinite, like the internet. That's exactly, it's like a replica of it, except for we feed it more for ego than the one thing the internet doesn't do for us is it's not life. It's not actual life. Well, neither is the mind in a sense, because it's just perspective, isn't it? It's just showing you these things. Unless you're in that calm state of mind, it is constantly open, and it's not got these blocks or these bits of chunks of information, which is why meditation is so important, so vital to have that stillness and that quiet time, to get into that expanse that all of it is your life, you know. But just the parts that we're focusing on, and by all of it I mean nothing, the emptiness of it all is what all of life is. We create our own structure and our own life and our fors and against and the likes and the dislikes based on what is in that field, based on what information on the internet, based on what Instagram say. It's the same thing. We're just feeding those reality tunnels. So you only decommission them or bring them down by the process of looking at the other side, and not bouncing over to it and then thinking that that's the holy grail. It's like, it all exists. How do I get the most compassionate view out of it? How do I make it more balanced? How does everybody win in this? Not everybody will win, but what's the closest way to it? Because life is all of it. That person's views who's stuck within those other boundaries, they're stuck there too. How can you help that person get out of it? You know, if you want to, not that you have to, but it's like the conflict is coming from us, the divide is coming from us, and we're the only ways that we change the things about it, not by being passive, but compassionate action, enlightened action, as they call it, enlightened activism, in the sense of let's move forward in a healthy way for everyone. Difficult to do, man. I think that's part of the world's in such a mess. You know, it's a beautiful, incredible place, but on the level of the psyche, it's so fragmented and such a mess, which is why a lot needs to be done, and we need to see within ourselves how we do that and how we make these social changes. You know, the
Yeah.
thing you mentioned about the president, if there's a female president or if we have a black president, the reason we champion that is because it's a step forward, a social step forward, that we've got something new in there now. And now it's happened. It's like, great, we can take that off and it's done. Now we'll see next time if it's the best for the job. Not that it's, we need that new shiny thing in. Because it does help. Like, black people not being slaves, or women being allowed to work and not being housewives, or, you know, whatever it is, they're steps forward. So they're celebrated for that. But then once that's become the normalization, you know, we spoke about it before, like, we can go too far that way at a point where we have so much broken up diversity that the world's just going to be a chaotic mess from going through all that. Everything's messy and these people should be like that, and then, okay, we're there, then it'll open up again where there's no structure.
I think that's down to more of a technological advancement as opposed to a social advancement. The technological advancement has allowed women to work in the workplace, like in the sense that jobs that we're doing, a man and a woman are completely capable of doing it now, because you don't need hard, laborious manpower anymore to lift things up. You've got machines to do it. So now that brings women into the workplace. I don't think it's suddenly a bunch of people rallying together and saying, this is what we want, this and that. I don't think that's created it. I think that has brought awareness to what's been going on. But I think the way society's gone, the technology, how that's advanced so much, has allowed us to now live in a world where, you know, you look at a woman and a man and you should be only basing them on their competence, you know, because now you don't need to. There are very small jobs, for example, bricklaying and stuff, which still require a certain amount of, you know, biological, you know, power, whatever you want to call it, and that comes from. That's why 94%, 95% of bricklayers are men, and very small percentages are women, and that's not to say they can't do the job. It just means that in that very still primitive sort of job, because there's something that we've done for thousands of years, you know, creating and building and stripping things away, it requires something, you require the best, or the person that has the most amount of strength or power. But stuff like sitting in an office or managing a group of people, no one has ever said that men are better at doing it. You know, no one has ever, well, there might be individuals who have these views, but in terms of the collective society, not one society has said, well, we just want to completely suppress women because we just think women are inferior. So I think it's moving away from that narrative and understanding that actually women are completely capable. But at the same time, like we said many a time before, being a housewife, raising kids, it's nothing to, you know, it's not an easy task. It's something to not underestimate, because, you know, I would say 4 kids, my mum had 4 kids, so I have 3 siblings. To raise 4 kids, it's a very difficult task. And the fact that she did it, and when my father was working, it's just a credit to how amazing she was. So this is what I mean. It's just really understanding how we want to deem life in the perspective of how we see life. So what do you deem as successful? Maybe can you change your perspective on success? Maybe your success doesn't have to involve financial success, but also self-gratifying success, how you feel about certain things, how you're passionate about certain things. So looking at it in that perspective as well. And I think the whole thing about the internet, comparing that to the mind, it's very interesting, because people have now created algorithms for the internet, so then you are refining and focusing on particular things. Why have we not learned to do that with the mind? Why have we not created an algorithm or created some sort of tool to be able to focus our mind on one particular thing? Well, the tools are out there. Why are we not using those? So it's something that, again, food for thought. Maybe people need to start working on that individual level before they go out there and start to initiate change out in the world, when their perspective is also pretty much, you know, tainted by very extremist views.
There's a quote I shared on Instagram the other day. It was a Krishnamurti one, and he was saying that the technology that we had, the computers, they're going to do all the thinking for us. So we only have 2 choices now. It's either we go down the road of entertainment and laxity and doing nothing with life other than entertainment, or we see how far our psychology is and we follow that path, which is very enticing, and that's where I would like to go with it, just because I have a natural interest in that anyway. But you know, you live a life of entertainment or leisure for what purpose? Ultimately, nothing comes from it, does it? You know, you're stuck in a pleasure and pain system of just getting more of that, and not experience anything else out of life other than. But even that, people are like, oh, what's wrong with, you know, living in a life of pleasure and entertainment? Or you can just have a look at what happens if you drink too much, or you smoke too much, or you just sit at home playing video games, or you just, you do the leisurely activities that do nothing really for the whole. And that Pinocchio is always a good example of that. Jordan Peterson does a really good take on it on one of these Disney breakdowns that he does. How they all go to Pleasure Island, and they turn into donkeys and jackasses, and it's saying something within that, But yeah, from the technological standpoint, it's like the computer itself, or the internet of things. It's just a replication of a human mind, But it's taking away those purpose for the manual labours, and ultimately I see the benefit of that is that we get more freedom, we get more creativity, we get more art, more expression, things that are alive, we don't have to worry about those stuff. And talking about jobs and where it came for women, I think it was within munition factories first during the war, was it, World War II, where women started to work then to do what the men, because they were all dying and dropping off, so they had to do that. And we go, oh yeah, wow, they should be treated as we should be treated as equals, and everyone can do the appropriate thing. And what would we be doing if we didn't have if everything was, which it will be, robotic and mechanical and computerized? It will happen, it's going to happen
eventually.
I remember watching a documentary a few years back about, and there's a truck driver, and he was like, American guys, like, what am I going to do now? Is the trucks are driving themselves, or the drones are loading up the shops, what can I do? And it's like, the concern is why universal income will have to come at some point, hopefully through non-nefarious means, but not a means of control, but a means of, well, this is what we have to do to look after our citizens. Everyone has a certain amount of money to live well, to have your food and your basic essentials taken care of, and then if you want more, you put your creativity to it, or you make things, you carpenter, you sell pictures, you clean someone's house, whatever we have to do to live a much more relaxed life that's away from the grind of I have to finish this job to get my money. Like, what a much more beneficial world and we have to work with what we've identified ourselves with a job or with a role. Like for people like ourselves, personal training, breathwork, calisthenics would be fine in the sense that people would like to do that stuff. People would still enjoy that kind of thing. But more in the shop workers or the manual jobs, be much more difficult for that, which is why, again, the self-reflection with the identity of ourselves and what we think we are or who we think we are needs that perspective on it to widen it out and open it up and be diverse, be able to move with the times, which isn't easy. Yes, that's what we want to do. It's not easy, but train ourselves for these situations. Like when we spoke about death, train yourself, understand death, that your loved ones are going to die, your partner is going to die, your parents are going to die. It's going to happen, and let's see how we can make that a positive thing or even a celebration of it. The grieving process is a part of it, but the outcome's always going to be there whether we ignore it or not. The same with technological advancements. Like, we need to start for this stuff now because it's going to come. Already we look at the kids in the younger generations and they're in it. They don't know nothing else but it. So what we're going to do when that comes, just to be creative, man, and artistic, and maybe it's an idealistic view, but to live as humans free from the burden of maintaining an income, based off money. Like, wow, freedom.
I just want to go back to the point that Muzz mentioned about using the anxiety as a positive driving force, and I think it goes back to what we were saying about the boundaries and the faculties of the body. I think the problem with today, and I think this is why one of the modern generation is going through a lot of mental health problems. It's happening because we've created an environment where like we said before in previous podcasts, we use these things like mental health as a badge of honor. We wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I'm stressed. You wear it as a badge of honor. If I don't feel stressed, I don't feel like I'm working. We've done that. We've created that sort of situation. So now when you're taking these people or these kids into the next generation or the next sort of 20 or 30 years of life, next decade, and like you said, technology is advancing. People are feeling more redundant and more mental health is rising because they feel like I'm now useless because all the jobs, all the tasks that I want to be doing are already occupied or taken by people that are better. So now we're using the faculties, the basic faculties of the human mind or the human body as well, or the intellect, and we're using it against our own system. So for someone to come forward and say, well, anxiety, yeah, it happens, and I'm using it as a positive thing as a driving force to allow me to react and respond in certain situations. So then I'm not overthinking something, and later on down the line I'm not regretting it. That's such a refreshing approach, and I think that's something that we have to do with this whole movement for pushing mental health awareness. I don't think it's awareness that's going to cause change. It's what you're doing about it. Yes, we've, like you said about the whole thing about the presidency, we've had a black president. Great. What's the next thing now? Let's get someone who is actually going to do stuff. That's what needs to happen. Acknowledge the situation. Yes, women were oppressed at one point. We've acknowledged it. We've moved past it. We're in a world where now, like we said, most jobs, both men and women, are equal to it. And it's all based on how well you can do the job. So we need to do the same thing in terms of our own faculties. Yes, mental health is a problem, but now how do we tackle that issue? How do we tackle that issue at the individual level? How do I tackle the mental health that you're having? How do I tackle the mental health that these guys are having? Stuff like that. It's using the tools as a positive means to move forward, not to completely just kind of reminisce about, oh, I've got mental health is a problem, everyone's got mental health. It's like the one mental health that everyone should have is death, right? Everyone's going to die. Why is that not a big anxiety until you get towards those moments in your life where you're going to die? You might die through old age, the natural way, or you might die through an accident, or you might go through an experience, that almost causes you to die, or heart attack in old age or whatever. Why are we so anxiety based on things that are very small, like, oh, I'm crossing the road, I'm scared a car's going to run me over, and you get mental health out of that? And obviously I'm not making light of people's situations, but I'm trying to push the point that we're creating more sort of forms, we're building a layer of bubble wrap on us, and we keep building it thicker and thicker, and then we're putting a sign on top of that, pinning a sign down, like when people reach a summit, they throw a flag into the pole, a pole into the summit, and a flag, and says, I've achieved this, to show people we've achieved this, or I've achieved this, I'm the first person. That's what seems to be happening. We wrap ourselves with the bubble wrap, and we put a pole on top and says mental health, trouble upbringing, mental health, criminal background, mental health, alcoholic. We're doing this and we're wearing it as badges of honor. Remember when you were a kid and they used to give you a gold star for doing something great? Great, you've done something great. But then those kids that used to get, stars just for participation stars and stuff like that, we're doing the same thing with this mental health thing. We're saying it's great, it's a participation, it's great that you've acknowledged that you've got mental health. My question is, what are you going to do about it now? Or what can you do about it? And I think, and it sounds very bitter and blunt, and it's coming out of frustration that I'm saying this, but I don't think it is. I think it's me going through that, and then me saying to myself one day that, right, I'm going through it. I can either become a victim of this situation and drown in my own tears, or I can now, mop up those tears and do something to change the situation, even a tiny bit, just to see go towards the light at the end of the tunnel, instead of just looking at the light at the end of the tunnel and just thinking, oh, I can never achieve it, let me just stay on this side, on the dark side. So yeah, I
think it depends on different factors. If there's a physiological issue, like something in a brain dismount, something like those lines, of course,
that's a different situation.
Yeah, it's a different thing. It's seen what's bred into us by society,
or self-inflicted,
because maybe the way that we look at things now, as we're saying, with the females working, with ladies working, or African Americans in slavery, or all these things that were just obviously clearly messed up at the time. It's not seen like that, is it? It's normal, So as we progress as a whole, as the world, we get to these issues and then we clean something out. And now it seems, with the mental health perspective, we're finally getting to ourselves on a bigger scale. And now we're really dissecting what's going on. Maybe we use that incorrectly by allowing use the word trend, the populace of mental health. Because there are issues, man, there really are. And you get stuck into funks or depression or anxiety. It's, why are they heightened now? Maybe it's like, why are they heightened currently? But But yeah, I think there's a positive spin on it. We're cleaning out the outside of the world. Like wars are generally less now, you know, and people are a bit more switched on with what you're going to Iraq for when there's no weapons of mass destruction and there's millions of protesters there and things like that. Great, we're really getting rid of this. And as technology comes, as long as it's not used for corruption and imprisonment, it will be used to help the world and even perhaps changing the army when we realise that there's less wars, when we become less aggressive to other states. So what issues do we look at then? Your society and yourself, and seeing it, I feel like this, that maybe then that's on the mental health side. Why am I not happy? Well, yeah, I think always coming down to what am I doing and what am I capable of doing. So if somebody does have big issues, again, my mum, she had severe depression for a long time, but there was times when she couldn't do anything to help herself, and there was times when she probably could. She could eat better, you could do a bit of exercise, you could watch some things that are uplifting, or like there are things that we can do. So it's being delicate in your approach to it, but understanding that it's got to come from yourself too. You have to choose it. We don't want this way. Not being harsh on yourself is, I'm in a funk and I'm stuck. Fine, that's cool. Know what we need to do in that state. Know whether it's to go and talk to somebody else about it. Know whether it's to, like Muzz, say, call up a friend and have a chat. Know if you go, like me, I hadn't trained when I went through that burned out in lockdown. I didn't train for like 2 weeks and I felt like crap, man, and I was down. I was like, why am I feeling like this? That is, I think, what you're trying to say can be linked into somebody's mental health and go, it's my mental health. And yes, it was because I wasn't helping it. My physical body, my psychology, mental health are linked. They have to be kept well. What you're putting into your body is, and what you're thinking is, like, what are we fueling that? And again, technology, a big distractor from it. What we choose to do with our time, entertainment based. But the benefits of it are that, yes, it's time to look at ourselves, to look inwards. What am I having issues with? What's current? Mental health, right? Let's sort myself in order, see what happens when I get in a funk and what gets me out of it, and use that template and offer it out. Doesn't have to be that for everyone, because it ain't going to be the same for everyone. It really isn't. But you know something about it now. And yeah, perhaps it's a good thing that we're seeing these things now. Maybe we exaggerate them first before we shrink them down and go, oh yeah, that's how I sort it out.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap up. I think we've got 3 minutes before 5 o'clock. These guys have got clients. Ash is probably wanting to put up the board.
The hangboard.
The hangboard. It's yours. You bought it.
I bought it for you.
Birthday present, right? 30th birthday present in a few weeks' time. But yeah, right. This was an interesting podcast, wasn't it? We just rambled about shit. And we had stuff going on in the background, so it'll be interesting to see if we can still have conversations with stuff going on in the background. I noticed how quiet these guys were.
Very respectful.
Yeah, landing very softly. I don't think I've seen anyone train so quietly. But yeah, it's nice that we've got a bunch of people that are respectful. A bunch of friends that are respectful.
Or disrespectful for doing it here. We chose our.
Yeah, that's true.
Down.
We were probably disrespectful for doing it here. But circumstances required it. Your circumstances. Right.
World's a jumble.
Yeah. Podcast 34.
34, man.
Usual platforms, Spotify, iTunes, and always watches. This one, again, we always say this every week, but this one's definitely one to watch because of the environment we're in. So watch our 7 or 8 minute preview on Instagram if you don't want to watch the entire thing, and listen to us for the rest of the duration of the podcast. Thank you so much. We shall see you in the next one.
See you next one.